Our esteemed moderator just wished me an enjoyable pension, and I do hope that I will be able to enjoy one once the time is ripe for that. But so far, I cannot afford it. I am a leader of a large power, and I must be reserved. I must be careful about what I say and abstain from aggressive remarks, but I generally think that's not my style. At the same time, I believe we should be straightforward here at this conference, and we must be open and speak our mind openly. Otherwise, these deliberations would be pointless. And this straightforward style of discussion and communication is very much in demand today, because against the background of the great developments that we're seeing globally today, the topic of today's discussion at the Valdai Forum, and that is the future in progress, and the philosophy of international relations is very relevant, and I believe that since last year's forum, few things have really changed in the world to the better. The controversies and contradictions related to the redistribution of wealth are only getting aggravated, and these disputes are having a negative effect on humanity's and the international community's ability to withstand the global challenges. And now there is already talk of the failure of this global trend of multiculturalism. I believe this might owe to a rather premature choice made by the Western elites some 15 years ago, around the 1990s and the turn of the century. They had a chance back then to make the recent developments and the changes, to make them permanent by giving them a positive nature. But instead, coming out of the Cold War, many nations preferred to simply rebuild the world order according to their selfish interests and outlook. They decided to shun the concept of an equal dialogue with other countries, and improving the existing international institutions, while instead trying to impose the jurisdiction of their existing institutions onto the rest of the world, trying to make the world follow their rules while insisting on exclusivity for themselves. But it has turned out that not everybody in the world was prepared to follow suit and to agree with that. To be open about it, a lot of people in the world were not willing to fall in line with that. It's just that some were prepared to be outspoken and some were not ready for that yet. We're seeing that the global economy cannot come out of a systemic crisis, but at the same time, the notions of what's right and wrong in global politics as well as in the global economy are constantly changed and altered. Things that used to be considered the norm quite recently are now being proclaimed false or criminal. If the leading elites of the world believe that some standards are beneficial to them, they try to impose them on the rest of the world. But once those norms are of no more use to them, they are proclaimed criminal or wrong. Therefore, there were airstrikes against Belgrade, against Iraq, against Libya, and there was a military operation in Afghanistan launched without any mandate from the UN Security Council, seeking to alter the global balance, the global security balance. They have dismantled the international architecture that banned the creation of global strategic weapon systems. They've sparked international conflicts, military conflicts that has thrown whole regions of the world into turmoil and chaos and forced millions of people to be displaced and become refugees. They've been using sanctions and measures of economic pressure in breach of WTO rules, forming trade blocs with very rigid outer borders which benefit global corporations. And why they do that is also very clear. They cannot secure their interests within the framework of WTO rules, so they want to put this global organization aside and set up an elite club for themselves. At the same time, we see that they are reluctant. Our international partners are reluctant to address some of the global issues or upgrade or modernize some of the old Cold War era structures that have really run their course and that are outdated, such as NATO. And an important mechanism for providing pan-European or transatlantic security, such as the OSCE, they are constantly trying to turn into a tool for serving some specific political interests, and as a result, this most important international body has been effectively working to no result. They've been they've been pumping up the so-called Russian threat, which is just a tool for growing military budgets and insisting on more military spending, on placing new military bases closer to Russia's borders. Of course, it is very beneficial and sometimes rewarding to try to pass for a defender, a protector of civilization against barbaric hordes. But Russia is not going to invade anyone. That would be just laughable, ridiculous. I've been reading Western analytical articles, not only of the people who are in this room today, but also of some of the analysts in the United States and otherwise in the West. And I find their forecasts and predictions absurd. In Europe, there are about 500 million people, and all those countries are NATO members. The overall population of NATO is roughly 660 million people, and Russia is a mere 146 million. And still, they're trying to beat the war drum and inflate this Russian threat. And what's going on in the U.S. is a hysteria. I can't call it any other name regarding Russia's alleged attempts to influence the U.S. presidential election. Indeed, the United States has a lot of real issues and problems, starting from its enormous sovereign debt and down to all the shootings and all the gun violence in that country. It would seem that the presidential candidates should be discussing these most relevant and acute issues and some others, but obviously they have nothing to offer the American public to calm them down, and it is easier for them to try and distract the public with all this talk of Russian spies and hackers and cyber crime and attempts to influence American politics. I would like to ask them and ask you, does anybody seriously believe that Russia could actually somehow influence the choice that the American people are to make? Do you consider the United States to be some kind of a banana republic? The U.S. is a great nation. Correct me if I'm wrong. This brings us to the question, if things continue to go this way, what is the world heading to? How will the world look like tomorrow? Do we have answers to questions such as how do we provide security, stability, economic growth? How do we improve the standards of living of our people. Sadly as it is, there is no consensus opinion in the world about it. I don't know, maybe you have come up with some solutions over the past 3 days of deliberations, and if so, I would be most interested to hear it. But there is clearly a lack, a deficit of strategy and of ideology for the future, and that creates the uncertainty that directly affects social relations. Various surveys show that very regrettably, people in various regions of the world are looking to the future with wariness, with concern, and sometimes with fear. They have no certainty about tomorrow, and people lack mechanisms to affect their societies, to affect the choices made by their decision makers, by their politicians. Formally, all the attributes, all the instruments of democracy are there in most of modern-day countries. There are parliaments and elections, but even in so-called well-developed democracies, citizens don't have any instruments of directly influencing the government and influencing decisions, the process of decision-making. And the only policy and the policies selected by political elites seem to digress and steer away from the interests of the people more and more. And now we see people vote in a very different manner as from what's been recommended or urged on them by so-called systemic political parties or mainstream media. People are showing a very different kind of vote. And political parties that used to consider marginal in the past, being dubbed either far left or far right, are now coming to the forefront and actually pushing aside some of the old mainstream parties. At first, it was proclaimed to be just a coincidence, an accident. But when this turned out to be a systemic development, they started claiming that the public just fails to understand its elites and its government. It fails to understand their rationale. And then they started claiming that most often this is a consequence of foreign propaganda, namely Russian propaganda. I can tell you honestly, I wish we had such an efficient, powerful propaganda machine in Russia. But unfortunately we don't. We don't have the powerful media organizations such as CNN or the BBC. So far we don't have those capabilities. As for this alleged triumph of politically marginalized basket cases over the reasonable sane people, it's not really about that, as we understand. It's just about the fact that average citizens no longer have any confidence in the ruling class. And by the way, the political agendas have been absolutely devoid of any real meaning. Instead of discussing real issues, people start engaging in mudslinging, exchanging compromising stories, discussing who pinched whom on what, and who sleeps with whom. And that's just embarrassing. Not to say that it's very counterproductive. If you look at the political programs of candidates, it seems that they've been written based on the same templates. There are hardly any differences you can notice. The political elites have been trying to impose ideological models that, to me, in my opinion, undermine cultural and national identity. And in some countries, make people sacrifice their sovereignty and give it up to the benefit of their sovereign. So this leads us to this question: so who is marginal? The expanding class of supranational oligarchy, very often not controlled by the public or the government, or the majority of the public, which want very simple and basic things, such as stability and security, prospects for themselves and their children, preservation of their national cultural identity, and primarily overall security for themselves and their loved ones. People are scared by the fact that terrorism has become a phenomenon of everyday life rather than an exceptional occurrence. People are now living in a world where a terrorist attack can happen any day next door, rather than somewhere in the world. And anything can become a weapon, from a self-made explosive device to a very regular lorry, a truck. There's been terrorist attacks across Europe, in Paris, Nice, across Germany, and even in Russia. And it shows that terrorists no longer need any cells or groups. They can act and operate absolutely by themselves, self-sufficiently. All they need is just ideology to direct them against a specific enemy, namely you and I. There is also a lack of capability, an inaptitude to realistically assess the threat and its causes. And we are seeing that in Syria. We've been unable to launch a political process in that country despite multiple efforts. And it would seem that finally, after long deliberations, a united front against terrorism was beginning to get formed. But in the long run, this has not happened. And even our personal arrangements with the U.S. president have not worked. There are forces at work in Washington which have done everything they could to make sure that those agreements never actually enter into effect and are never implemented in real life. And I'm surprised by this commitment, determination of Western countries to repeat their own mistakes over and over again. We are seeing what's been happening in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, and a number of other countries. And I've been asking myself, where are the results of those countries' fight against terrorism or war on terror, be that on a regional level or a country-based level? There might be minor results, but globally there is no progress. The threat has just been aggravating. We remember the euphoria in some of the Western capitals regarding the so-called Arab Spring. So where are all those celebrations and great expectations today? Meanwhile, Russia's appeals for a joint front against terrorism have been ignored. Moreover, some of our Western partners have been arming, supplying and training those terrorist groups, hoping to use them to their own political ends sometime. That is a highly dangerous gamble. And I would like to address the gamblers once again. The extremists are smarter than you. They are more cunning than you, and they are stronger than you. And gambling with them or courting them, you will always end up the loser. Dear participants, it is obvious that today the international community must focus on the real issues facing humankind. Addressing those issues will enable us to make the world more stable and more secure, and make the international system more fair and more equality-based, and eventually turn from globalization for the few for globalization for all. I'm sure that we can only overcome our shared threats and challenges jointly, based on the United Nations statute. Today, the United Nations is the only institution in the world that is unmatched in terms of representation. It is a forum for an equal dialogue. The universal rules of the United Nations are necessary to integrate and include as many countries as possible in the global processes of economic integration and ensure consensus in their action while preserving their national models and identities. We have no doubt that sovereignty is a central concept of the entire body of international relations. It is a safeguard of peace and stability on a national as well as on the international level. Countries that can rely on history that goes back centuries in the world are not few in the world. And we know how to value our history and our sovereignty and independence. We do not seek global superiority or hegemony. In our understanding, development and strength in today's world are not about threatening other countries and trying to subdue them to yourself, but in being able to see the real issues and assist in trying to bring countries together to address those issues. And that is how Russia sees its role in the world today. The priorities without which a safe future for our planet would be impossible are obvious and well known. I will say nothing new. It is equal and indivisible security for all nations. Only once we end armed conflicts and provide for peaceful development for all countries will we be able to speak of progress. We need to address humanitarian, social, and economic issues. We must actually combat terrorism and extremism with action and not with words. It's been acknowledged many times that we can only win that war on terror by uniting the efforts of all the nations in the world. And we continue offering that to all of our partners in the world. We also need to go back to the issue of restoring the sovereignty and self-reliance of Middle East nations. That requires a comprehensive program, another Marshall Plan for this war-torn region, if you will. And Russia is certainly willing to most actively take part in such a project. You cannot make the world more stable unless you provide for a sustainable, consistent development of the global economy. It's important to provide an enabling environment for economic growth globally and make sure that the world is no longer split up into winners and losers, perennial winners and perennial losers. The game rules must be such that the poorer countries must have a chance to catch up with those that are considered more developed. We need to provide for evening out the speed and rate of economic development to make sure that the benefits of globalization are accessible and available to all. This might enable us to alleviate one of the worst challenges of today's world, and that is poverty. We must make global international economic cooperation mutually beneficial so that each economy could become an equal partner and player in the global economy. The trend for regionalizing global trade will probably continue, but regional trade agreements must complement and not substitute universal global norms. Russia is in favor of harmonizing regional economic formats and vehicles based on respect for mutual interests, and that's been our principle in developing the Eurasian Economic Cooperation Organization and in negotiating with our partners on bringing it closer with China's project for a Silk Route integration. And hopefully this will enable us to pursue large-scale Eurasian integration, which will enable us to form a large integration contour in Eurasia. In order to implement this idea, we've already launched a 5+1 negotiation on trade and economic cooperation among all the participants of that process. Developing human potential is instrumental to this end. Only when we have highly qualified, trained staff which have every chance of realizing themselves and using themselves can we speak of stability. Only people who can live and work to the best of their abilities instead of fighting for survival can we speak of stability. Only preserving the environment and our natural riches will ensure stability, and that those objectives will become increasingly important in the coming decades. Healthcare is also one of the crucial issues here. There are tasks of combating combating global epidemics, reducing mortality in some regions of the world, and so on. There is a lot of room for improvement, of course. We need to give all the people in the world, not just in the most developed countries, a chance to live a safe, long, and accomplished life. In other words, in building a basis for the world of tomorrow, we need to start today investing in all the priority areas of development for humankind. And of course, it is important that the outlines of the world of tomorrow should get a widespread and all-inclusive public discussion, including all the issues, all the aspects of our lives. And I'm confident that you, as members of the Valdai Club, will take part most actively in it. Your high level of expertise enables all of us to give a valid assessment to the developments in Russia and globally, predict the global trends of tomorrow, and give some evaluation and offer recommendations that should help us find a way to a safer and a more stable world of the future that we all crave so much. Thank you.